Hello everyone! Today we're going to take a look at how Yoimiya will be a great addition for your teams. Let's not waste any time and get started. I'll provide timestamps down below if you want to skip ahead to anything that you're curious about Yoimiya. But these are all things that I found, and I think these are all great things that you might want to know about Yoimiya, and that's going to influence your decision whether you want to pull for her or not. For those of you who don't know, Yoimiya is actually playable right now in the story, and when you get to play her, we get a preview of what talents and stats that she has. I'm not gonna lie, I find it weird that she has a 4-piece Noblesse set on her for her demo, since this is usually for a support character, but she also is equipping a bow that's built for a main DPS bow. I believe there's better choices for it, but regardless, I mean, it still works. So I did go through the math to double check. I got the calculations right for my Excel sheet. Knowing myself, something will probably be wrong, but at least for the video that I'm making, everything should be correct. But these are the stats that she currently has when she is at level 88. So what you can see is that her crit rate goes up as she levels. So she's going to be doing some great damage out there, whether you have her as the main DPS or as a support, which we're going to look at later. Let's take a look at her attacks to get a more in-depth guide on her kit. First is her normal. Unfortunately, I don't think there's anything too special about her normal. She just has like a regular normal, and then she just has a normal charge shot. However, her charge level 2 does generate up to 3 Kindling arrow. These deal pyro damage when they hit an opponent. To be honest, I have no idea what the point of these are, as they do pretty little damage for how long it takes to charge them. The only thing I can think about is if you're trying to apply pyro status on your enemies, and these can separate and hit multiple enemies individually. Maybe you're trying to go for some kind of elemental reactions, maybe? I don't know if that's still worth it on the amount of time you have to take to be able to do this in the first place, so we'll have to see later on once more people are able to take a better look at Yoimiya. Second is her skill. Now this is what is actually going to make her change into a main DPS normal attack archer unit. You do lose your Kindling arrows, and your not full charge attacks, so the physical ones are still physical, but your normal damage turns into pyro. And then mathematically what was interesting for me was that the skill's damage multiplies with your normal. Maybe there's past characters that this is. I haven't really seen any characters, at least the ones I've calculated, that this. Because usually it's some kind of additive damage or something similar to that. Now, I was curious on how you want to level her talents, and I know her data isn't released, but I decided to make up my own numbers on her talents of what would make sense. The normal auto attack is based on the first hit, which is taken from Ganyu's normals. The skill talent level I made up and just decreased it and increased it by 3% for each talent level, which seems to make the most sense on how her normal will be boosted in my opinion. I made a key here to help us understand how I categorize this, which is basically each color's range is 18%. Notice that the higher numbers are more dependent on how you level your auto attacks, rather than your skill talent. This is because you get less diminishing returns as you level your auto attacks. How you reduce diminishing returns is try to make the two numbers that are multiplying with each other closer to each other. For example, let's say your auto attack is 100% and your skill is 130%. Hence, when you multiply those two with each other, you will get 130% as your auto attack boosts the skill. However, if we take that 30% from the skill and separate it into 15% for the auto attack, so 115%, and then 50% for the skill, so 115% to the skill. We get 132.25%, which basically means we were able to optimize the damage. The reason is the distance between 115% versus 150% is none, or extremely small, basically, in comparison to 100% versus 130%. That's why you want to boost your auto attack first, if you're planning on making a main DPS Yoimiya, since it's getting closer to the skill damage talents, whereas if you level your skill damage first, you're getting further away from your auto attack, which gives you a lower boost to your overall damage. TLDR, raise auto attack first, and then your skill for your main DPS. And the game looks like it wants you to make her a main DPS, as her talent buffs your pyro damage up to 20%, despite each individual buff lasting a mere 3 seconds, I guess. Now, however, I personally think that Yoimiya shines the most from her burst. You burst out some damage on the mom, and you apply an Aura's Blaze marker on an enemy. Now, this doesn't impact Yoimiya at all, as nothing happens when she hits the enemy. However, if a different party member were to hit the enemy with the marker, it will explode and also apply pyro on everyone. The damage is decent, and I tested that with my Barbara on what is the internal cooldown is, and it's around 3 seconds of when the next explosion will occur. And from this, the burst does do less damage than Xiangling's level 6 talent burst. However, Yoimiya can actually be a great substitute for Xiangling to a Melt Ganyu. For those of you who do not know, there are two playstyles for Ganyu, which is the Freeze Comp Ganyu, where you go all Blizzard Strayer set, or Melt Ganyu, where you can go either Wanderers or Shimenawa set. Shimenawa will probably give you better balance in normal and melt damage though. Yoimiya's burst works well as it activates right when you hit the opponent. Now we can see this from the footage as I cleanse the enemy with Barbara, so the enemy has no marker on him. I don't know what I did with Bennett. The first shot, as you can see, does a melt, obviously, right on the headshot on the enemy. However, notice that the other enemy who did not have a pyro application now does. What this means is that the explosion has occurred and then the pyro status has been applied to the enemy before the bloom came down. So what we're going to see is that as her bloom comes down, it's going to melt onto the second enemy. So what we can see here is that you are actually able to melt onto the enemy. So you're going to be doing a reverse melt reaction. Now, what can be confusing is that if you see the marker on the original enemy right here, you can see that it looks like there's only one melt occurring, but in actuality, it's two melts occurring. This was already tested out and proved with Xiangling and Bennett on the Ganyu mains, but just in case of you not sure, I'm just going to show you what this means. This is my Ganyu stats for this footage, which is weak because the enemies die way too fast, so I had to make her weaker. And then do be aware that this Ganyu has a 20% attack bonus because of Yoimiya's 4-piece Noblesse Oblige set. Now, if we were to calculate the damage for the charge shot and the melt, we can see that the first charge shot based on the calculation must be a charged melt crit. And if it's within the margin of error, just a few damage off. However, take a look at the second number, which looks like a regular cryo damage. Not a crit, as you can see, based on the size of the number. But a damage for the bloom is only this much. While if we were to look at the crit, it's actually too high, right? If we take a better look at this, the calculation shows that melt is actually occurring on the bloom as well. You can see this from the exact number. Surprisingly, there was no margin of error from here. In addition, Ganyu's charge shot seems to be timed perfectly with Yoimiya's pyro marker cooldown. What this means is that when you do your second charge shot, you're able to do your second charge shot again right away, and then you should be able to interact with the next explosion right away from there. So you probably don't need to worry about the timing of your charge shots too much. More testing will probably be required in the future for this though. Now, probably another question we are probably wondering about is it better than Xiangling's burst, since she is usually a huge role in melt teams due to her burst and Woba? I honestly don't know. The reason is that the explosions range from Yoimiya is pretty small in comparison to Xiangling's burst. However, if we're talking about like changing up the teams for a melt composition, it's a pretty nice change from the current norm. Now the thing is, what's really nice about this burst is that it's not just activated from only normal and charged attacks, but it can be skills and bursts as well. Hence, for example, you can have an explosion black hole, burst out Yoimiya's burst, have Venti suck them up with his burst, and then just use Ganyu to just shoot them down, doing melt, swirl, all these other fun stuff, right? Or you can have another vape team where this is a bit different, where you're going to be using Yoimiya as more of a main DPS role here. So first you're going to burst with Xingqiu and then keep Yoimiya as your DPS, because even though Yoimiya herself can't activate the explosions, remember that the explosions can be activated through bursts as well, meaning that Xingqiu's source will be activating them, and then you're going to be getting some nice vape damage out there with the explosions, and Yoimiya is going to be doing her normal damage as well. Unfortunately, a major con I have found from Yoimiya's burst is that it unfortunately does not snapshot. I tested it out by having Yoimiya burst in Bennett's burst and activate an explosion outside of the circle with Bennett, and unfortunately the explosion's damage matches with the debuffed Yoimiya. This could separate whether you want to use Yoimiya for your melt team or your vape team or whatever versus Xiangling, because Xiangling's burst, if I remember correctly, it does snapshot. However, this doesn't change the fact that Yoimiya's kit is unique and allows you to do some interesting teams as either a support or even as a main DPS. Hence, I'm interested on seeing what everyone else will come up with the future teams for Yoimiya once they pull her. Now, if this video was helpful for you, please give it a like and share it with a friend who is interested in pulling for Yoimiya. But I will see you all in the next video.